Chandeliers bled their light through the porthole window in the kitchen door like a tide of gold I no longer belonged to, and I stood with my sleeves rolled and my hands in water hot enough to erase fingerprints, listening to the ballroom breathe. Somewhere beyond the door, a quartet rehearsed the same 8 bars until they clicked like a metronome for rich conversation. In here, stainless steel held the heat, and the caterer's radios spit static, and I practiced the one skill I needed most tonight: silence. I had dressed myself to pass. Black slacks, plain shirt, hair pulled back so tight it taught my face a new kind of discipline, an apron threaded twice around my waist so it wouldn't betray me with a sloppy bow. The name pinned to my chest was not mine, and that too was part of the experiment. People tell you what they are when they think you can't do anything to them. I wanted to hear it clean. Logan's text, "Be there by 9." Love sat warm in my pocket like a kept promise. He thought I would be waiting by the grand staircase when he arrived, a martini in my hand to match his tie and the script of 100 galas behind my eyes. He didn't know I had decided to come in through the service entrance with the catering crew at 4, shoulder a crate of champagne like I'd done it for years, and learn the plumbing beneath our life. The captain barely glanced at me when I signed the clipboard. He had a florist emergency and a server who'd called in sick, and you don't check the engine room when the ballroom clock is already running fast. Steam and time and the metallic ghost of ice filled the air as the kitchen pulled itself into shape. Trays left. Trays returned emptier and slicker. The dish machine coughed and roared like a small, angry train. And then the door swung, and I went with the first wave, a tray of flutes balanced on my palm. The other hand freed a pivot when someone with a net worth leaned at me like gravity. Our ballroom was its usual contradiction, a room we made by erasing walls, a place designed for eyes to skate without catching. Light lived everywhere, braided through the orchids, braided through the marble, braided through the diamonds traveling past my shoulder like small comets with opinions. The first lesson of invisibility arrived the way a draft does, quiet and complete. It wasn't cruelty at first, it was vacancy. Faces slid over me like I was a polished surface, and I learned the peculiar weight of a thank you that doesn't see you. I said of course and my pleasure and anything else tonight, and most of the time the words hit the air and fell without a sound, like rice thrown in a wind that never blesses a wedding. I kept moving. Movement is a kind of armor. I tracked the room's pulse. The donors who wore their generosity like a signature cufflink, the couples who spoke in notes passed through smiles, the board members rehearsing their moral high ground with canapes. In this ecology I was a useful shadow. Near the mantel, 3 men compared foundation gifts the way boys compare scars. By the windows, 2 women rearranged a school district with nothing more than a seating chart. Under the staircase, a city councilman promised to hate the same thing as the person he wanted on his side, which is a form of courtship in certain zip codes. And then there was the gold dress. She arrived the way weather arrives, steady and already happening. Tall, coiffed, a smile that knew where the camera would be before the camera did. She cut the air into lanes you could merge into without looking. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her orbit, the event organizer who becomes the event. She looked at my tray the way a conductor looks at a section that's slightly late and said, gently, sweetly, almost musically, "We're warm on champagne." I was already turning when she added, "Let's pick it up, shall we?" The kind of sentence that sounds like help and lands like rank. I smiled. I pivoted. I picked it up. The second lesson arrived with lacquered nails and a red dress that could have raised its own property taxes. She came at me sideways in a cluster of perfume and pearls, angled her empty flute at my tray like a periscope, and studied the bubbles as if they were trying to lie to her. "Excuse me, miss," she said without letting the question mark live. "This champagne is too warm." She didn't look at me. She looked through me at the problem of me. I offered a replacement, colder, the glass sweating like a secret, and she took it the way one takes a ticket from a toll booth, which is to say she took it from no one. And I was no one, and the line of traffic behind her moved. Names began announcing themselves in the spaces people left between sentences: Priscilla for gold, Catherine for red, and I slipped them into the pockets of my mind the way you tuck away a key you won't need until the door insists. When the first wave fed the second, the room changed temperature. Appetite replaced ceremony. Laughter loosened as the band found its groove. And in the eddies where the wealthy talk freely to the air, I heard the lines that float only when uniforms are present. People like them should be grateful to have a job. If they were smarter, they wouldn't be carrying trays. My nanny's cousin does this. She says they make good tips if they flirt. The lines didn't surprise me. The ease did. It takes practice to sit your conscience down and teach it to stay. I threaded the room and kept my promise to myself. Observe, don't perform. But observation is not neutral. It is arranged feeling. Every time a gaze slid past me, the arrangement shifted, and I took note. The cut glass of a sconce became a lecture about refraction. The shine on a floor I had approved with a decorator became a mirror that refused to lie. I saw myself too. The woman who could have been at the top of the stairs, hand on the banister, taking compliments on a night she didn't even organize, and instead had chosen to be here with her palm warmed by a tray. There is privilege in choosing your vantage point. There is also truth. The storm outside found its stride, a steady percussion on the skylights that snuck into the music between phrases. Every time the kitchen door swung, the scent of rain shouldered past roast lamb and clementine glaze and reminded me of the porch where I like to stand when thunder redraws the neighborhood. I stayed on the floor because experiments have rules, and rules mean the results will be something you can read later without lying to yourself. I refilled, I rotated, I exchanged empties for fulls, and when the captain shouted that we were short one on the back line because the sick server had become a vanished server, I saw the arithmetic beneath the spectacle, the perfect rooms that are always one person away from wobbling. That was when Priscilla stepped into my path by the piano, her smile bright enough to light the staff meeting in her head. "We're behind on dishes," she said, and made it sound like a duet we'd been rehearsing together for years. "Head back and help them catch up." She touched my elbow like I needed to be steered. It was not a request, and I discovered I had a boundary I hadn't written down. The boundary did not speak. It breathed. I let the breath leave. "Yes," I said, because sometimes the cleanest data comes from the part of the maze you didn't want to walk. The kitchen took me in like a lung. Heat, steam, lemon, steel, racks waiting like a fleet. The machine exhaled its dragon breath and opened on plates that had been 1,000 forks ago. I rolled my sleeves higher and found the rhythm wash. Rinse, rack, stack, slide, set, easy on the stems, careful of the chip at the lip, so elemental it felt older than my name. The water was a wound and then a lesson and then a place to think. There are people who find their truest thoughts while running. Mine show up when my hands are busy reminding the world it can be clean again. Through the service window I could see a slice of ballroom decide nothing of consequence and feel holy about it. Every few minutes the door swung wide and let in the bright weather of entitlement. Catherine came first, red drawing a line down the center of the stainless room. Laughter stirred with a fingertip so it wouldn't spill. "Oh, this is rich," she said to the air, which meant to me, which meant to the idea of me. "Look at little Miss Server downgraded to dish duty." Priscilla hovered behind her, the supervisory moon. Professionals rarely laugh for clients. They curate it. She checked a timer that didn't exist and told me to keep my elbows in. I kept my elbows in. I kept everything in. This is what an experiment costs. You pay in pride and get your change in clarity. The water lifted soap into constellations that slid across my skin. Tiny nicks I didn't remember earning woke up and spoke to me in stings. I thought about the other woman who should have been at this sink if the sick call hadn't happened. About the rent that does arithmetic at night. About the bus that doesn't wait if you're closing. About the way the body holds tired in the calves when shoes aren't built to forgive you. I am not a martyr. I am a woman with choices. And tonight I was using the largest of them to stand where the quiet truths gather. The door swung again and the jazz from the ballroom slipped through like it was embarrassed to be overheard. A cook brushed past with a hotel pan and said thanks without looking, which is its own kind of looking, and the machine coughed up a cloud that glossed my face in steam. In the blur, everything was reflection, the white plates, the silver prongs, the ghost blue of my sleeves, and I thought, not for the first time, that broken things still throw back light if you hold them right. I reached for the next rack and heard it, the sentence that doesn't arrive as a question and never needs a name. "Excuse me, miss," came sharp and practiced from the doorway, and when I looked up I met the red dress again, lacquered and certain, her glass a small impatient metronome. "This champagne is too warm." The rain outside turned the windows into moving mirrors, and inside the ballroom, the masks stayed dry. I kept my tray steady, letting my body become part of the rhythm step, pivot, smile, nod. That's what servers do best, move without existing. As the night deepened, the noise softened into the expensive kind of laughter, the one that fills silence but never warms it. I drifted through the crowd, invisible but listening. Priscilla, the woman in gold who ruled the gala like it was her personal kingdom, hovered near the stage, snapping her fingers at anyone who walked too slowly. She didn't talk to people, she rearranged them. Aaliyah, slower, she snapped when I passed too quickly. 10 minutes later, Aaliyah, faster. There was no right speed, only her speed. Keep that tray level. Eyes down, chin up but not too high. Oh dear, even your stance looks middle class. Each instruction was a scalpel dressed as a suggestion. I followed, silent, watching her reflection in the marble floor shimmer like a crown built on insecurity. Around her gathered donors and politicians, faces trained to smile for cameras, not people. Their conversation drifted past me, heavy with self-congratulation. "We raised nearly $500,000 last year," a man boasted, adjusting his cufflinks. "And all tax-deductible," another joked, and they laughed. The kind of laughter that forgets who cooks their meals. I served them like I was born to. The trick to invisibility is to move gracefully enough that guilt can't trip over you. When I brought a tray of appetizers to a table near the orchestra, Catherine, the woman in the red dress, was holding court. Her perfume arrived before her voice. "You know," she said to her circle, "I could never live without my staff. I'd die before I washed a dish." The group laughed obediently. Then her eyes cut toward me, lingering just long enough to make her next words an arrow. "But some people seem built for it. Don't they, sweetheart?" She smiled a smile that could curdle milk and turned away before I could answer. I placed the plate gently in front of her, the way you set a stone into still water, and walked away without spilling a single thought. Back in the kitchen corridor, I caught a glimpse of myself in the silver reflection of a serving tray. Hair pinned, face calm, expression neutral. It struck me how easily the world accepts your role once you wear the costume for long enough. I wasn't angry yet, just cold in a way that had nothing to do with weather. An hour later, the real exhaustion began to show, not mine, but theirs. Wealth tires quickly when attention isn't constant. The speeches dragged. The wine slowed. The kindness ran out. A woman snapped her fingers for water as if summoning a pet. A man joked to his table. At least the help's easy on the eyes. And everyone chuckled like it was harmless. I memorized the tone. That's what the experiment was for. To study the music of cruelty. How it plays so softly people think it's just conversation. Then Priscilla reappeared. Her smile was the kind that comes before a storm. "You there," she said, pointing her manicured finger at me. "You've been terribly slow with those trays. Honestly, do they not train you people anymore?" "I'm sorry, ma'am," I replied. "You don't look sorry. And don't ma'am me, this isn't a diner." She took a glass from my tray and handed it to a guest without looking. "Remember, dear, posture sells respectability. You can't fake refinement if you slouch." I nodded, every word stored away like data points in a cruel experiment. She wasn't angry because I'd failed. She was angry because I existed without begging. There's something about quiet dignity that threatens people who need superiority to breathe. When I stepped back into the ballroom, the music changed to a slower rhythm. Couples floated across the floor, and laughter began to fray at the edges. I offered champagne to a group near the fountain. One man waved me away. Another took a glass and said, "Be careful not to drop it. It probably costs more than your paycheck." His friends laughed, and I laughed too, but inside, I counted the seconds it took for shame to pass across his eyes when he realized I didn't react. Indifference can be its own weapon. I began to notice small details, the waiters with accents softening their vowels to sound less foreign, the janitor sweeping near the door who straightened his back when someone passed, the way the guests' smiles tightened when they thought of tips. Every corner of that ballroom was a mirror reflecting how society arranges worth. Near midnight, a commotion stirred in the kitchen. One of the staff had called in sick, leaving a mountain of dirty dishes. Priscilla's voice sliced through the noise. "Who's free? We're short in the back." Her eyes found me instantly, drawn to the silence she could still command. "You Aaliyah, was it? Go help with the dishes. Chop chop." "I was assigned to serve, ma'am," I said softly. She blinked at the word ma'am again, this time sharper. "Listen, sweetheart. You'll do whatever I say if you want to keep this job. Now move." The sentence cracked across the room, and conversation dimmed around us. A few guests turned, pretending not to listen while listening intently. I could have ended it there, one sentence about ownership, one name. But the experiment wasn't done. I wanted to see how deep her confidence ran. So I nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Her smile was thin, victorious. "Good girl. Try to make yourself useful." She turned back to her group, laughing about finding good help. The laughter spread like spilled wine. As I walked toward the kitchen, the marble under my shoes felt heavier than it should have. I passed the reflection of the chandelier one last time, its crystals fractured into 1,000 small suns. Each one flickered like a choice I still had but wasn't ready to use. Inside the kitchen, the noise swallowed me. Steam rose in clouds, silver trays clattered, and water hissed from the industrial sink. Piles of plates leaned like tired soldiers. A cook brushed past me, too busy to care who I was. I tied a towel around my waist and stepped to the sink. The first plate burned my fingers, the second numbed them. With each rinse, I felt the thin film of my old life polish, perfume, perfection peel away. Priscilla's voice carried from the door. "I hope you're not too delicate for real work, dear. Some of us earn our comfort." I didn't answer. The water had a language of its own, and it spoke louder than she did. For a moment, the whole room quieted. The music from the ballroom faded, leaving only the rhythm of water, the metallic clink of porcelain, and my own heartbeat syncing with it. The mask I'd worn all night slipped, but not in the way she imagined. Behind the role of a servant, I finally saw the truth: how easily people confuse power with virtue, money with worth, cruelty with order. The door swung open again, and Catherine appeared beside Priscilla, her laughter already in the air. "Oh, this is rich," she said. "Our little waitress is on dish duty now. Tell me, sweetheart, do you find honest work fulfilling?" I met her eyes and said simply, "Yes, it keeps the hands clean." They didn't understand the sentence, but it made them uncomfortable. Catherine rolled her eyes. "Such attitude. No wonder people like you never get far." Priscilla chuckled. "Don't mind her. She's new. Probably thinks she's too good for this kind of job." And just like that, they walked away, their perfume lingering longer than their empathy. I turned back to the sink, water fogging my reflection on the metal wall. For the first time all night, I wasn't performing. I was witnessing, not them, myself. The experiment had revealed what I needed to know. In a world obsessed with hierarchy, the simplest act of grace becomes rebellion. As I stacked the final plate, the kitchen door creaked open again. This time, a different voice carried in from the ballroom, familiar, steady, warm enough to still the air. "Excuse me," the voice called, calm but searching. "Has anyone seen my wife? I'm looking for Aaliyah." Every sound stopped. Water, footsteps, conversation. My heart froze mid-beat. In that silence, I knew the experiment was over. The sentence floated in from the ballroom and sliced through steam and clatter with calm authority. "Has anyone seen my wife? I'm looking for Aaliyah." My name struck the metal like a coin. I didn't turn. The rack in my hands had to land. The faucet had to keep running. And the experiment needed a few more seconds of truth. Priscilla filled the doorway with her event night smile. "Sir, we're in the middle of service," she chimed. "If you need a staff member, I'll—" "My wife," the voice repeated, closer now. "Aaliyah." The kitchen stilled in pockets. Catherine's red dress appeared behind Priscilla. Curiosity lit like a match. "There's an Aaliyah," she said, her eyes settling on me as if she'd found a prop out of place. "But she's busy." I slid the rack into the machine and reached for a column of plates, still warm from hands and attention. Steps crossed tile behind me. "Excuse me," the man said from the threshold, polite and precise. "Have you seen—" "She's helping with dishes," Catherine announced, lifting a flute from a rack with the casual entitlement of someone who has never been told no, learning the value of honest work. She twirled the glass to watch light run around the rim. "The base is wet," I said without looking up. "Set it down." She smiled. "I managed just fine." The base skated. Her grip tightened too late. The stem slipped, clipped the tray, and pinwheeled toward the floor. The glass shattered clean and absolute into a spray that mapped itself across the tile. I folded a towel and knelt, gathering the larger pieces first, then the glitter hiding in grout. "Careful," Priscilla snapped, then forced composure. No one laughed at Catherine's budget joke. The air around the doorway had weight now. I lifted the intact stem, the bowl gone, and watched it catch the fluorescent strip into a small river of light. "Broken things can still reflect," I murmured, and let it fall into the trash. Blood beaded along a shallow nick on my finger. I pressed the towel there and stood. He was in the doorway, rain, dark suit, tie loosened, eyes moving first to my hands, then to my face. "Are you hurt?" he asked me, and only me. "It's nothing," I said. Priscilla tried to retake the scene. "We've got it under control. A minor hiccup. Your wife," she forced the word, was kindly assisting. Catherine's expression rearranged itself, disbelief, recognition, calculation. "Wife?" she repeated. He didn't confirm or deny. He stepped closer without touching me, and the kitchen learned where gravity lived. A violin in the ballroom searched for the beat it had lost. I rapped my finger. Priscilla's tone turned managerial. "We should return to the program. The children's hospital, we have an auction in 10. "We will," I said. "But that is why we can't pretend nothing happened. Some of those children's parents wash dishes for a living. Some will empty these bins tomorrow while everyone sleeps off generosity. Respect shouldn't be a costume we put on for rank." Silence arranged itself. Catherine shifted. "No one told us who you were," she said, suddenly small. "If we'd known, you would have behaved," I answered. "That isn't the same as respect." Priscilla pasted on a conciliatory smile and aimed it at the witnesses. "A valuable reminder for everyone. Teamwork." I looked through the service window at the chandelier's net of light and thought about the woman who had called in sick, the rent that doesn't blink, the back that carries other people's weekends. The hot water stung, then numbed my cut. The sting felt honest. He spoke near my shoulder. "Do you need anything?" 30 seconds, I said. "And a bandage." A cook handed me a first aid kit. I taped the gauze, flexed my hand, and the room exhaled. Trays came in. Trays went out. Steam fogged the corners of the stainless, until everything reflected as if through rain. The watchers in the hall retreated, pretending they'd been called elsewhere. But curtains had been tugged. Angles had changed. Catherine lingered. "I'm sorry," she said to the bandage. "I didn't know." "I know," I said. "Be careful walking out. There's always a sliver you can't see." Priscilla clapped once like a teacher ending an argument. "Excellent. Let's move forward." She offered the words to him, hoping to be released. He didn't take them. He looked at me. I closed the tap. The stream narrowed to a thread and vanished. I had heard the music people make when they think the instruments are cheap. I had watched manners change shape for rank. I had learned which faces crack when light hits them straight. He didn't reach for me. He waited, and the waiting felt like respect. "Ready?" he asked, opening a door with the word. I glanced through the window. Beyond the chandelier, rain braided down the glass. The ballroom pulsed with practiced elegance. A few heads were already angled toward the kitchen, hungry for spectacle they could retell as lesson without changing anything. I breathed once. The air tasted like lemon, heat, and the faint metallic afterthought of crystal. "Ready," I said. We didn't stage a flourish. We didn't announce anything. We stepped toward the door together, not touching, the distance between us small and chosen. A runner squeezed past with fresh flutes and forgot to call the auction because he'd never seen quiet look so much like momentum. Behind us, the machine clicked into its next cycle, a steady sound that reminded me who would be back at dawn to bend this room into order, without applause. At the threshold, I paused. One shard remained, no bigger than a fingernail, turning the overhead light into a needle. I lifted it with 2 fingers and dropped it in the trash. "There," I said. "Now we can walk." He held the door. The quartet found a hopeful line. Conversation softened into a curious hush. We crossed from heat and steel into fragrance and marble, from unpolished labor to polished performance. Behind us, the kitchen exhaled. Ahead, the chandelier brightened. Whatever came next belonged in the open. Before we moved, The steward edged close, eyes flicking from my bandage to his stack of racks. "Ma'am," he stopped, unsure which word was safe. "We'll cover this." "You already do," I said. "Every night." He nodded once, relief and pride sharing the same breath. Logan turned to me. "Out there or later?" he asked, offering me the timing like a choice. "Now," I said. "It matters while they're still listening." Priscilla seized the word. "Wonderful," she said too quickly. "We'll fold a brief acknowledgement into the appeal. Something about dignity." "Not a brand," I said. "A habit." She blinked. Catherine tried contrition again. "I truly didn't mean—" "I know," I said. "That's why it's common." She flinched. I checked the floor again, a reflex learned the hard way. Clean. The heat of the kitchen steadied me more than the cool of the ballroom would. "You learn to trust rooms that don't need you to perform." Logan angled his body, making a small corridor through the people still pretending to need something from the past. "We'll go slow," he said. "If you change your mind, we turn back." "I won't," I said. "But thank you for the option." A runner passed with a tray held high and whispered, "Good luck," without knowing what he meant. The cook who'd handed me the kit pretended to scour a counter already clean, then risked a quick smile. In certain jobs, solidarity can only be spoken sideways. I returned the smile and felt the knot under my ribs loosen. In the service window, the chandelier pattern shifted as someone adjusted a dimmer. The light softened, and with it the faces on the other side, as if brightness had been the thing making them hard. "All right," I said, more to myself than to anyone. "Let's go learn if the ballroom can hear." At the edge of my vision, a busboy halted, clutching a crate of empties like a shield. He mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded. His shoulders lowered half an inch, the exact measure of relief, affordable in a place where every mistake is public and every courtesy private. The machine hissed to a stop. Steam curled off the door like a curtain falling. Somewhere outside, a gavel tapped a podium for order. The sound felt early. Order would be decided here first. The sound of the gavel from the ballroom faded as the door swung shut behind us. The corridor between kitchen and chandelier felt like a border between two countries, the land of those who serve and the land of those who believe they're owed service. Every step echoed differently once the shoes touched marble again. The ballroom lights hit my eyes like interrogation lamps, the orchestra shifting into polite confusion as people realized something unscripted was about to happen. I could feel hundreds of gazes turning, searching for the reason their gossip had paused. Logan walked beside me, calm but unreadable. He didn't hold my hand yet. He let me decide whether the world deserved to see that connection. My apron was still damp, soap clinging faintly to the cuffs of my sleeves. We looked mismatched, he, the billionaire host in a rain-dark suit, me, the anonymous woman who'd been carrying trays all evening. The sight alone confused people who prefer simple hierarchies. Priscilla was the first to find her voice. She glided toward us with a practiced laugh that came half a second too late. "Mr. Morrison," she began brightly, "I can explain everything. Your wife was simply—" He stopped walking. His stillness drew a circle of silence around us. Was simply what? His tone wasn't loud, but it landed with weight. The chatter that had begun to rise died instantly. Catherine, standing nearby with a trembling glass in her hand, tried to help. "It was a misunderstanding," she said. "We didn't realize she was important." I finished for her. Color drained from her face. Logan turned slightly toward the crowd now gathering at the edge of the dance floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady, almost conversational. "Since everyone seems curious, allow me to clarify. The woman standing next to me," he gestured toward me, "is my wife, Aaliyah Morrison. She co-owns this home, planned much of tonight's event, and, until a few minutes ago, was washing dishes in her own kitchen because she was told to by my staff." The room froze in disbelief. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Conversations collapsed into stunned murmurs. A few people laughed nervously, assuming it was some kind of elaborate prank. Others just stared, their minds busy rearranging everything they thought they knew about who mattered in the room. Priscilla's lips parted in disbelief. "Your wife?" she managed. "Mr. Morrison, I assure you, had I known." "That," I said quietly, "is exactly the problem. You needed to know who I was before deciding how to treat me." Her painted smile cracked. Around her, guests shifted uncomfortably, looking for exits that weren't physical. Wealth has many languages, but none for genuine shame. Logan's hand found mine then, not possessive, but steady. For years, he said to the audience, Aaliyah and I have supported projects for children born into circumstances none of us would envy. We host these events hoping generosity might mean something more than a tax deduction. But tonight, my wife wanted to see the truth of our social circle, and I think she saw it. Whispers spread like wind over tall grass. I could feel the electricity of panic moving through the crowd, people remembering every word they'd said within earshot of a woman they thought invisible. Catherine's glass trembled. A drop of champagne slipped over her hand and fell soundlessly to the carpet. I stepped forward, the smell of soap still on my skin. I watched how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching, I said. And I learned that some of you mistake status for worth. You treat kindness like currency and respect like a luxury item. But the truth is simpler. The people who pour your drinks, park your cars, and clean your plates, they make your comfort possible. Their work isn't beneath you. It's the foundation holding you up. Someone clapped once, sharply, before realizing this wasn't that kind of speech. The sound died mid-echo. Catherine opened her mouth, but Logan's gaze stopped her. Catherine, he said evenly, you mentioned earlier that people like my wife probably couldn't afford a decent apartment. You'll be happy to know she helps fund affordable housing projects across the state. As for your husband's company, consider our pending deal canceled. We prefer to work with partners who understand basic respect. A flush climbed up her neck. She stammered something about misunderstanding, but the room wasn't listening anymore. The narrative had shifted, and she was trapped in the silence she'd once inflicted on others. Priscilla attempted damage control. Mr. Morrison, please understand. We were under pressure. These events required discipline, and Logan cut her off with a small, polite gesture. Discipline is one thing, humiliation is another. I took a slow breath, steadying my voice. The irony is that this was meant to be a charity gala for children whose parents work in service jobs. You wanted to raise money for them while degrading the very people they come from. Tell me, what kind of charity begins with cruelty? The question landed like a pebble dropped into deep water. Ripples of discomfort spread through every corner of the ballroom. Some guests lowered their eyes. Others fumbled with their phones, pretending distraction. A few looked genuinely thoughtful, but guilt is heavy, and most people set it down as quickly as they can. A man near the front tried to lighten the tension. Surely no harm was meant, he said weakly. We're all friends here. Friends? I asked. Then perhaps friendship needs better standards. The orchestra stood frozen, instruments lowered, as if afraid to soundtrack the truth. Logan squeezed my hand once before addressing the crowd again. Tonight was supposed to celebrate generosity. Let's make it mean something. Before you leave, take a moment to thank the people who worked this event, the servers, the cooks, the cleaners. They've seen your true faces. You might want them to see better ones before the night ends. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it carried farther than the microphone ever had. He turned to me then, eyes soft. Anything you'd like to add? I looked at the guests, their jewels glinting under the chandelier's filtered light. Just this, I said. True character isn't revealed by how you treat people above you. It's revealed by how you treat those you think are below you. Tonight, many of you failed that test, but failure can teach, if you let it. A slow murmur of acknowledgement moved through the crowd. Someone near the back whispered, "She's right," and others nodded, as if permission had been granted to feel human again. Priscilla stood very still. The golden fabric of her gown shimmered like armor starting to crack. "Mrs. Morrison," she said finally, "you have my sincerest apologies. I lost sight of what mattered." "Maybe," I replied, "or maybe you finally saw it." The ballroom breathed again unevenly, like a patient waking from anesthesia. Some guests hurried toward the exits, unwilling to face their reflections. Others approached me hesitantly, offering soft apologies that trembled between sincerity and damage control. I accepted them all the same way with silence. Silence can be kinder than words when people aren't ready to hear the truth yet. Logan led me to the center of the room. The orchestra, sensing the shift, began playing something low and uncertain, We stood under the chandelier, the same one whose crystals had mirrored my anonymity hours ago. Now, every facet scattered light across the walls like fragments of clarity. He brushed a stray bubble of soap from my sleeve, a private gesture disguised as nothing. "You didn't have to endure that," he whispered. "I did," I said. "Otherwise, they'd never see what they are." Reporters had started filming quietly at the edges. A story was already being born, the billionaire's wife who went undercover as a servant at her own gala. But for me, it wasn't about headlines. It was about something older and simpler, dignity reclaimed. When the music softened, Logan raised his voice one last time. "To every worker who made tonight possible, thank you. This house belongs to you as much as to us." He turned toward the staff clustered by the kitchen door, faces tired, eyes wide. Some looked away shyly, others stood taller. Applause rippled across the room, hesitant at first, then real. For the first time that night, it sounded like something honest. Catherine had disappeared. Priscilla stood alone near the bar, clutching a glass of water instead of wine. The spotlight had moved, and she was learning what humility tastes like. I took one last look around the room, the marble floors, the perfect centerpieces, the people shifting uneasily under the glow they once worshipped. The experiment was over. What remained was understanding. As Logan guided me toward the exit, I paused at the threshold and turned back. "Remember this moment," I said quietly, not sure if anyone was listening. "Every chandelier can go dark. What matters is how you treat people when the lights are off." Then we left the ballroom together. Behind us, the orchestra resumed a slow, reflective tune. It sounded less like celebration and more like repentance. In the hallway, where the marble gave way to the familiar scent of our home, I finally exhaled. The night air from an open window touched my face, cool and forgiving. "Are you angry?" Logan asked gently. "No," I said. "Just awake." We reached the staircase that led upstairs to the quiet places untouched by performance. The hum of voices behind us dimmed, replaced by the steady rhythm of rain outside. Logan stopped on the landing, looking back once at the ballroom doors. "You handled it better than I ever could." "I didn't handle it," I said. "I just let the truth do its job." The rain quickened, pattering against the tall windows, washing the last echoes of applause into something softer. Beneath it all, I could still hear the faint hum of the dish machine below, the steady reminder of where the night had begun. We stood there for a long moment, watching the reflections of raindrops sliding down glass. They carried the light of the chandelier inside, breaking it into smaller, humbler pieces. I thought about what I'd said earlier, that broken things still reflect light. It felt truer now than ever. Logan wrapped his arm around my shoulders at last. "Let's go home," he said, and we both smiled at the irony. Because for the first time that night, I truly was. When we stepped back inside, the orchestra had changed its tune. The melody was slower now, as if the instruments themselves understood that something sacred had shifted in the air. Guests stood in small, uneasy clusters. No one was quite sure whether to clap, apologize, or disappear. The glitter of the chandelier no longer looked glamorous, it looked harsh, as if the light had turned into judgment. Logan moved to the center of the room, his presence alone enough to draw the attention of everyone still pretending to be occupied with their champagne. "We were going to begin the auction," he said, his voice low but clear. "But perhaps what we need first is honesty." The murmur that followed was nervous, like the rustle of dry leaves before rain. He glanced at me, a silent invitation. I stepped forward, my palms still damp from the kitchen, the smell of soap faint on my sleeves. "Tonight was supposed to be about generosity," I began. "Yet I spent most of this evening watching people who claim to care about others treat those around them as invisible." I scanned the faces in front of me, the pearls, the tuxedos, the smiles trembling on the edge of shame. "You call it charity, but charity without respect is vanity dressed in glitter." A few heads turned downward. A man near the front shifted, clearing his throat as if he could cough out discomfort. Another whispered, "She's right," but softly, afraid of being overheard. Catherine stood by the bar, face pale, eyes fixed on the floor. Priscilla beside her was rigid, her mask of professionalism cracking. It was almost merciful to see them silent for once. "This isn't about me," I continued. "It's about every person you ignored tonight, the waiters, the cleaners, the drivers waiting outside in the rain. You smiled for the cameras, raised your glasses for a cause, and yet you forgot that the cause begins here, with how you treat the people within reach. For a moment, the room didn't breathe. Then an older woman near the back, a teacher, I remembered her, nodded. "She's right," she said, louder this time. "We've lost sight of kindness." The words unlocked the rest. Applause didn't come all at once. It grew, hesitant but real, until it filled the ballroom with something better than noise: acknowledgement. Logan took my hand and spoke again, his tone softer now. "I want to thank my wife for reminding us what dignity looks like. This house is not built by marble or money, it's built by people. And tonight, those people were tested more than anyone else in this room." He gestured toward the staff gathered near the kitchen door, men and women in black uniforms, eyes wide with disbelief. They worked harder than any of us tonight, and they did it while being overlooked. That ends now. Every dollar raised in this auction will go not to another publicity project, but to improving wages, health care, and opportunities for service workers in this city. If anyone here disagrees, you're free to leave. A hush followed, then a few guests began to clap, and soon the entire room joined in. The applause wasn't for us, it was for something long overdue. Priscilla, trembling, approached. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison," she stammered. "I was wrong. I see that now." I looked at her carefully. "Seeing is a start," I said, "but remembering is harder. When the lights fade, that's when you decide who you really are." She nodded, unable to speak. Logan turned to the crowd once more. "If you truly believe in charity, start by greeting the people who make your life possible. Tonight, we raise not only money, but awareness of something more valuable: humility." He motioned toward the auction table. "Let's begin again, but this time, with gratitude." The bidding started differently now. Guests no longer laughed loudly. They looked inward between each raise of a hand. Catherine disappeared quietly after donating an anonymous sum, perhaps an apology written in numbers. Priscilla stayed until the end, clapping at all the right moments, her gold dress dulled under the weight of self-awareness. When the final item sold, Logan thanked everyone and closed with a line that stilled the air. "Kindness is the only currency that never loses value." People began to leave, slower this time. Several guests stopped to thank the staff, shaking hands they hadn't noticed before. The workers, cautious but proud, nodded in return. For once, the goodbyes sounded sincere. As the last of the guests drifted toward the doors, I lingered in the center of the ballroom. The chandelier above seemed softer now, no longer judging but forgiving. A waiter passed and whispered, "Thank you, ma'am," before hurrying away. Logan approached, setting his hand on my back. "You changed something tonight," he said quietly. "I didn't," I replied. "The truth did. I just held up the mirror." He smiled, tired but content. Around us, the sound of glasses being cleared and chairs stacked replaced the orchestra's music. Ordinary sounds real, honest, grounding. As we turned toward the exit, a young server stopped us. "Mrs. Morrison," she said shyly, "I saw what you did. People like me, we notice. Thank you for not staying silent." Her words landed deeper than all the applause. I squeezed her hand. "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll never forget your worth, even when others do." Outside, the rain had stopped. The driveway glistened under the soft halo of streetlights. Logan opened an umbrella, though we didn't need it, a small habit of care. "Do you regret doing it?" he asked. "No," I said. "I regret that it was necessary." We stood for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the city beyond the gates. Inside, the last lights of the ballroom flickered off one by one, like a curtain finally closing. That night, I realized something simple but lasting. Dignity doesn't need an audience. It only needs courage. And as we walked back into our home, our real home, not the one filled with applause, I felt lighter. The soap scent had faded, but its lesson stayed. The world becomes cleaner only when someone dares to face the dirt. The night had finally surrendered to quiet. Outside, the rain tapered off until it was only memory on the window panes. The chandelier in the ballroom was dark now, its crystals still swaying faintly from the echoes of what had happened. I sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen that had held so much humiliation and truth, and watched steam curl from a cup of coffee between my palms. Logan moved around the counter in his shirt sleeves, silent except for the soft clink of a spoon against porcelain. The house felt different, not larger or smaller, just honest. He slid a second cup toward me and leaned against the counter. "The press already called," he said quietly. "They want statements. Everyone does." I smiled faintly. "Let them write what they want. The story isn't ours anymore." He studied me, the way he always does when searching for the part of a thought I haven't said aloud. "You look tired." "I'm not tired," I said. "Just full." Tonight held too many faces, too many truths. The clock above the stove ticked into the first minutes of morning. Through the window, the world was turning gray-blue, the color of forgiveness before the sun decides whether to rise. The dishes I'd washed hours ago gleamed quietly on their racks. I found comfort in their stillness, in how something once dirty could end up shining again. Logan sat opposite me. "You know, when I heard your name in the kitchen, I thought I'd misheard. Then I saw you there, sleeves rolled, water up to your wrists. I've never been angrier and prouder at the same time." "I didn't do it to make a scene," I said softly. "I just wanted to see how deep their masks went." He nodded. "You did more than that. You tore them off." For a while, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, to the early birds waking outside, to our own hearts finding a slower rhythm. When I finally looked up, Logan's eyes were gentle. "Would you do it again?" "Yes," I said, because the truth needed to be seen, not just by them, but by me. Sometimes we forget what privilege looks like until we step outside of it. He reached across the table, taking my hand. "You know what I kept thinking about? That line you said, broken things can still reflect light." I smiled. "Because it's true. We all break in different ways. The question is whether we still let the light through." The first beam of sunrise slid across the kitchen floor, catching the edge of a glass on the counter. The reflection danced briefly on the wall, a simple, wordless reminder that even what's fractured can shine. I thought about Priscilla, about Catherine, about every person in that ballroom who had flinched when the mirror turned toward them. Maybe they wouldn't change overnight. Maybe some would only change long enough to post an apology online. But even so, a seed had been planted, and seeds have patience. Later that morning, Logan's phone buzzed, non-stop donors, journalists, friends. He silenced it and brewed another pot of coffee. "You started something, Aaliyah," he said. "People are already talking about reforming how these events treat their workers." A few guests texted to say they're donating directly to staff funds. I looked down at the cup in my hands. "Good. Then the experiment worked." He laughed quietly. "You make it sound scientific." "In a way, it was," I said. "An experiment about empathy and how much of it survives when no one's watching." We stepped outside onto the back porch. The air was cool, smelling of rain and garden soil. The world beyond our gates shimmered with puddles, each one a mirror for the pale morning sky. "It's beautiful," Logan whispered. "It always was," I said. "We just forget to notice when the lights are too bright." He slipped an arm around my shoulders. The warmth of him, steady and human, pushed away the remnants of last night's cold laughter. "You gave them a lesson they'll remember," he said. "I hope they don't remember me," I answered. "I hope they remember the feeling, the sting of realizing they were wrong, and the relief that comes when you finally face it." Down the road, the catering trucks began to pull away. A few workers waved from their windows, shy but proud. I waved back. They had seen everything, the cruelty, the courage, the reckoning, and they had kept working through it, unacknowledged yet essential. That, I thought, is what dignity really looks like. Doing your part even when no one thanks you. By midday, the story had reached every major outlet. Headlines called it, "The Gala of Mirrors." Photos of the event, me in uniform beside Logan in his suit, circulated everywhere. Some praised us, others mocked the hypocrisy of the guests, but all of them carried the same message. Respect cannot be bought, and humility cannot be faked. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt peaceful. Justice, when quiet, is stronger. That night, long after the world had finished discussing us, Logan and I returned to the kitchen one more time. The lights were low, the air thick with the smell of coffee and rain-soaked wood. "You know," he said, "you changed this house tonight." "No," I whispered, touching the counter that had held so many plates, so much judgment. The house changed me. It reminded me that every wall, every chandelier, every glass is only as honorable as the people within it. He leaned closer. What are you thinking now? That we start over, I said. Smaller dinners, fewer speeches, more listening. He smiled. Agreed. For a long while, we stood in silence, just watching the morning light return through the window, painting silver lines across the clean plates. There was healing in that simplicity and knowing that every mess can be washed away, every wound can close, and every story can end softer than it began. I picked up one of the glasses, held it toward the light. The faint scratch near the rim caught the sun and glowed like a scar turned into art. Even broken things have purpose, I said. Logan nodded. And so do nights like that one. We sat down again, side by side, sharing the quiet warmth of fresh coffee and forgiveness. Outside, the neighborhood stirred awake, unaware that a house on the hill had witnessed something more valuable than any fortune: humility reborn. When I looked back at the sink, the reflection of dawn shimmered across the water, soft and forgiving. It reminded me that no matter how cruel the world becomes, kindness still has a place to begin, and it begins right here, with us. I turned to Logan and smiled. Let's make this our new tradition. A gala for kindness, not ego. He raised his cup. To kindness, he said. To light, I added. We clinked our cups together. Outside, the sun finally cleared the clouds, flooding the kitchen in gold. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely at peace, not because everyone had learned their lesson, but because I had remembered mine. Dignity doesn't shout. It simply stands, endures, and waits for the world to notice. And when it does, everything shines. If this story touched your heart about dignity, silence, and redemption, please follow and subscribe to the channel. Every story we share is a reminder that respect and kindness still exist in this world. Your support helps us bring more light to the places people forget to look.